Welcome to another edition of Driven to Lead. I'm your host, Wayne Brannon. In this program, we explore the real stories from key executives to find the leadership lessons that drove their success, whether in good times or bad. We got a great program for you today, so let's make it happen. Well, we're in for a treat today. We have as our guest Alex Papadopoulos from Soundwich Incorporated. It's a company based out of Cleveland, Ohio. Alex, you're the president and CEO of this company. How long have you been with the company?
I've been with the company about 10 and a half years now, Wayne.
Wow, that's great. And were you always running the company? Were you president and CEO, or did you work your way up through the company?
No, I held a number of positions with Soundwich over the years, but I started in as a process engineer on the manufacturing floor.
All right, so you knew the nuts and bolts from the ground up, right? So I tell you, I always think it's better when a leader knows the details of the business, because sometimes we have a
Uh,
tendency to tell people to do things that don't make any sense if we don't know the details.
yeah, I really do feel fortunate having worked in the company and, as an engineer and engineering manager before, stepping
Right,
into the senior leadership role, because like you said, I did get to learn, our products, well, our product lines, our manufacturing processes, our customers, spend
sure.
time in front of them, knew the
Right,
whole, I would say there's almost nobody in the company that I don't know, personally on a first name
right.
basis, at least,
No,
or doesn't know me.
fantastic.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think that was a tremendous advantage, when stepping up into the, senior leadership role.
As we get into our conversation today, I think it'd be helpful if the audience has some idea about what Sandwich does. Tell us a little bit about your products and your mission.
Sure. Soundwich, we've got a few different product lines, but I would say primarily we are a provider of thermal solutions and NVH solutions for the automotive, aerospace,
So
and industrial
we
sectors.
define NVH for our audience, please.
Sure, that's noise, vibration, and harshness.
Right,
So in the automotive space, it's dampening materials, sound absorbing
mhm,
materials,
right,
things to make your car quieter. And when it goes down the road, everyone gets a new car, they want it to be quieter, ride smoother, feel more solid, and so we
exactly.
make the types of products that go into the vehicle that help, meet those design targets.
Yeah, it's a critical area of a vehicle, and it's not one as customers we typically think about. So, you also, I think, mentioned to me when we talked previously that you have some undercarriage protection products as well.
Yeah, a lot of what we do lives in the parts of the of vehicles that
Mm,
most consumers might never see, but under hood, under body, and in the structure of the vehicle. So
right,
a lot of engines are more efficient now. Internal combustion engines are more efficient, so they burn
right.
hotter. They're all turbocharged now, so there's hotter heat sources. They're closer to sensitive electronics. Packaging is very challenging, and especially
Right,
on a hybrid electric vehicle, which has the electric and the gasoline. So
right,
we all that thermal protection or heat shielding, if you will.
right.
It's used a lot around those areas, either to keep something at an operating temperature or help protect a sensitive
Mm.
component from getting over temperature.
Yeah, and like with onboard computers and all of the connectivity issues in vehicles now, do you also have products that would shield electronics and magnetic fields and that kind of thing as well?
Yeah, that kind of goes hand in hand.
Okay.
Very, very similar type of parts or solutions for that. So there was sort of as battery development and EV development has sort of really accelerated in the last 10 years. There's been a demand, in that battery pack area, for EMF shielding that, use the same types of materials, just a different purpose that they're serving.
Hmm. Right, right. So when you were a younger man, thinking about what you were going to do for your career, did you think about automotive? Was that something that you were wanted to move toward, or were you just maybe focused on becoming an engineer? I mean, how did that
Yeah,
develop? What were your passions when you were younger, and how did that develop into where you are today?
yeah, I've always been passionate about cars. I've been a car enthusiast since as far back as I can remember. And when I was a little kid, I was getting you know 5 or 6 car magazines a month, delivered to my house, car from Europe, Car and Driver, Road and Track,
Right.
Motor Trend. So
Yeah.
I'd say I was always interested and excited and passionate about cars, um,
Good
since
for
a
you.
very young age. And I knew I wanted to be an engineer. I'm kind of surprised that I ended up in manufacturing. I didn't see that
Yeah.
coming, but
Okay.
I had a great opportunity, to get into that field after college, after getting my engineering degree, and I loved
Now,
it.
so, you say you got into manufacturing, so you're a manufacturing engineering company basically, but you
Mhm.
must do some hand-in-hand work with the OEM partners, and you're doing some development work as well, I expect, within a certain package that they need, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It kind of depends on with both the NVH, the sound absorbing or dampening
Mm-hmm.
product, and the thermal stuff, or even
Mm-hmm.
a more traditional stamping, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of depends on how the OEM breaks out, the design responsibility and source packages. We might be working directly with an
Right.
OEM. We might be working with a tier one supplier on some things because, I'd say the exhaust that goes to
Sure.
someone to design the whole
Yeah.
exhaust, and we might work with them to design the
Sure.
shielding on it, or we might work with
Yeah.
the OEM for it. So we participate at different levels of that. I'd say there's very little that we do is build to print. I'd say
Mm-hmm.
one of our competitive advantages is the level of engineering support that we give for those
Yeah.
parts, and those that application support and development.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
anytime
great.
we can get involved early in the process, the better the outcome for not only
Sure,
for
of
us but for
course.
our
Of
customer
course.
too.
Right. So when you were working as an engineer and in the manufacturing operations and then kind of working through the process up to becoming, the leader of the company, so was there any particular leadership training or did you have a mentor? I mean, how did you make this transition? Because I mean, at a fairly young age, you're running a big company and you're doing great. The company's tremendously successful. So it's all great. But as individuals, we don't always get the right kind of feedback and input and training and development that we need to get where we end up. But we have to somehow
Yeah,
put the puzzle pieces together, right? Tell me about your journey there.
yeah, definitely. I've had a sort of an accelerated path, like you said, and I've been blessed to have not only that opportunity but some good mentors along the way.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was a CEO that hired me. His name was Cliff Nastus. He was stayed with the company for a couple of years and then ended up needing to move back to Chicago for
Mm-hmm.
to be back with his family. But the owner of the company, Dan Moore, has been a tremendous mentor for me. He's sponsored me to go through business school and get my MBA, early
Mm-hmm.
on, and it's been great to have him to learn from him. He's started um, or acquired, probably I don't know how many dozens of companies. When
Mm-hmm.
I started at Soundwich, I think he had 24 companies, under his portfolio. Just a serial entrepreneur, very successful, and um, probably one of the greatest, living Cleveland entrepreneurs, still
Mm-hmm.
around. So
Right.
being able to work with and learn from him has been, an outstanding advantage for me.
What a gift that is.
Yeah.
We don't always have that. Sometimes we have to learn from bad leaders and learn what not to do,
Learn
right?
what not to
So,
do. Sure.
yeah. So, but to have a great mentor and leader who can show you the ropes and bring you along, that's a tremendous asset. That's fantastic. But even with that great support, I'm sure there were some leadership lessons you learned along the way, maybe some easier to learn than others. So, what we do in this program, as you know, Alex, is we look for the leadership lessons that are kind of inside the real world stories of key executives who are running businesses or tackling problems or looking to move a business to the next level and overcome a competitive challenge. So as we move into that, tell us a story or two about your journey and about Soundwich's journey. What do set the story up for us? Let us know what the situation was, and then kind of how you worked through it and what the outcome was.
Sure. I'll start with one that I think is it's in my unique to my situation and coming with an engineering background. I didn't spend a
Right,
career in sales or in marketing or in the commercial side of the enterprise, right?
right.
Which probably more people at this level have had a longer stint or at least carved that path at some point prior to being in this seat. So coming from that manufacturing and engineering background and very focused on doing it and getting it done, probably one of the earliest lessons that I had to learn that sticks out to me is uh, the difference in the type of work from being the engineer or project manager or even middle management. You got to let go of you know wanting to control it and doing it like that engineering mindset really you know it's different than what's needed as a leader and to be an inspirational and visionary leader. It's a different kind of work and a totally different like mindset to switch to. So I had to learn to let go of being the one to do it. Even if I know the answer,
Of course.
I've got to
Right.
empower my team to come up with that and lead them um, to be the ones to figure it out and to do it, and to execute on it. And that's not my role anymore. It's to communicate where we're going, to show the vision of what we're going to be, where we're going to go, what we're going
Hmm.
to accomplish. You know
For sure.
that was a hard lesson for me to learn because I wanted to win. I wanted to do it. I wanted to
Yeah.
get it done and move on to the next thing. And it's you're not going to be the person to do that anymore. You've got
Right.
to let
Right.
go, you know, and
I'm
not
not
worry about if
surprised.
somebody's doing it exactly the way that
Right.
I would do it.
I'm not surprised that that's on your list because especially all of us who are good at something and have done it for a while, it's difficult to delegate. And that's really what you're
Mhm.
talking about is delegation, right? Learning how to be a
Yeah.
good delegator and, as you said correctly, empowering your team to make those decisions. Sometimes if you have time, you can even allow them to make some mistakes so that they learn from the mistakes along the way. If you don't have time, you got to
Mhm.
guide them a little more closely, right? But letting the team take responsibility to the point where they're doing the work is key. So, what did you find happened early on when you started to, um, before you really realized what delegation was all about and how you're going to have to let go? I mean, what happened? Did you get into some headbutting with some of the team members for a while? Like, are you going to let me do
Yeah.
this or not? Or I mean, what
Yeah.
happened?
A little bit of that, I would say.
Yeah.
At least I was open-minded enough to to eventually recognize it when the feedback came back or I could see the signs of it that
Yeah.
hey, this is going on, and um, recognizing that it comes out as hey, I wouldn't want to be managed that way either.
Right. And were
You
the
know,
people honest enough to say, "Hey, your mother handing us a little too much"?
not so directly, I would say.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, it sort of manifested itself to
Mm-hmm.
that I don't feel like I've got room to breathe on this or
Mm-hmm.
room to do my job. And I know I wouldn't want to be micromanaged that way or to
Right.
feel like I was. So yeah, I had to start being mindful of that.
And what's your structure right now? So how many direct reports do you have that run the various aspects of the business?
Yeah, I have 7 direct reports now. So I've got,
Okay.
somebody that leads the sales, organization,
Hmm.
human
Hmm.
resources, manufacturing operations, um, quality, and finance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I mean that's a pretty good span of control. I mean, I've been as high as 13, 14 at points in my career with when it's a little
Yeah.
bit unwieldy, but I like somewhere between 6 and 12, 6 and 10 maybe is a good mix. So I think you're right in the sweet spot there. So now
Yeah.
you empower all of these other executives to run these activities. And what was one of the tools that you use now to keep yourself current and stay engaged so you can still provide the input and the guidance that you need to, but not get involved in the minutia unless it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, just to you know, to sort of define and what the cadence of communication is going to be. How often
Right.
are we going to have, there's some things that maybe my staff needs to look at and their staff needs to look at daily, and weekly. And maybe there's only a handful of things that I need to be in touch with them on. uh Key metrics within the business we're going to review weekly, monthly, quarterly, together. So we sort of define what matters in that, or
Hmm.
what are we going to measure, how are we going to measure it, and let's
Right.
define that. And periodically, say annually, we're going to set the goals for those various things. But
Hmm.
just through communication, though, in the meantime, and what
Hmm.
happens, here's this kind of thing that is
Yeah.
in your domain of control, like what's
Right.
setting expectations for you know uh the operations team. Here's what you need to care about and worry about, and here's kind of what you should be involving me in, and what you
Yeah.
don't need to involve me in. So
Right.
that's
And I
sort of
expect
just
there's a clear set of metrics on each of the projects. Everybody knows what the deliverables are, right?
sure, yep. Yeah, and then
Good.
they know when they have to report on them, when they have to
Right.
report out, when I'm going to look at it.
Yeah. Let me ask
And the
another
feedback
question.
loop too. I mean, some of it is,
Yeah.
on the individual level with my my direct reports. It's the finding a working rhythm too. I would say
Yes,
that
of
the
course. Of
different
course.
people might have different needs, or they may feel
Yep.
like they want to run something by me, even though it's their decision to make, and I'm fine letting them make that decision. But maybe they want
Yeah.
to
Sure.
check in with me. So
Yeah,
I'd
they
say
want your
each
advice,
individual
right? That's
varies.
great. Yeah. It's always smart to get the advice of someone else who's got potentially a different point of view, more experience. Maybe you've been through that before. You have a different point of view, a different expertise. That's a good sign that your team has a great deal of respect for you
Yeah.
when they do that, and it's kind of outside of the normal communication cadence, outside the staff
Yeah.
meetings or whatever. That's great. I was just going to say, thinking about this delegation of authority and the reporting relationships you have to run the company. From a leadership perspective, sometimes there's personalities in the team that kind of get the wrong idea about what their relationship is or what it should be. And sometimes that's affected by who the people are. And, I'm looking at you as, you know, a young man who succeeded very early in your career.
Mhm.
I would expect that at least 40% of your staff, your direct reports, and all the people down the organization are older than you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
More
tell me about that.
experience.
Has that been a challenge? I mean, just gaining the respect, or some people struggling with that more than they should have been, or?
I don't know that more than they should have, but there was definitely an adjustment period, I would say, from going to
Hmm.
anytime you go from being a peer with someone and then they report up through you.
Right.
There's challenges
Sure.
related to that, but you're right. There was some dynamics that were unique to my situation because my age, or
Hmm.
generational differences too. Folks that
Yeah.
were later in stage in their career that work differently than maybe I do, or
Hmm.
maybe than those who are younger than me too. um
Right.
but that's just stuff that I needed to go through, and I had to be mindful of and listen to and observe, kind of figure out how they felt about it, and
Hmm.
approach it. And here's how I you know prove myself in this position, and how I'm going to engage them and show them what success looks like for them in the position too.
That's
And if
smart. Yeah.
I'm fortunate that I didn't really have a whole lot of like, oh, they're not people that weren't going to get on board with it. you
Good.
know I did have to deal with that to a little bit, but
Hmm.
you got to find out if it's going to work or not, and if it's not going to work, okay, you're going to have to make a change.
You have to
So
change the players.
fortunately I
Yeah.
didn't have
And
to do a whole lot of that, but I
Yeah.
did have to do it in, one case.
Yeah, it's never something that we want to do, but it is necessary, and that's another area that is really hard to learn from an
Yeah.
MBA program, right? Or even from a mentor. How do you
Yeah.
deal with talking to an individual about the fact that our time together is coming to a close, right?
Yeah.
And to be respectful and to be fair and to be human about it,
Hmm.
while stating the facts and not getting into an argument. And it's a very delicate situation. It's one that can't be taken lightly.
Sure. Yeah. And, my situation, it was, an individual that was really talented. It wasn't about their ability to do the job, or they didn't
Mhm.
have the skill or the motivation, to do it. It was really just a mental, they were their own worst enemy on it. And,
Hmm.
and give them plenty of chances to get on board and, be a part of the team and, go where we're going. And,
Right.
if you're not, you're not. And, it, I don't think it was a surprise. The parting of ways, wasn't a surprise for, either party. Right.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, I heard that deadly phrase you never want to hear. The company's moving in another direction.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's obvious and sometimes not.
Sure.
So let me turn the time forward to kind of current days. It's a difficult time in the automotive business right now. I mean, there's a lot more uncertainty than there's been in a long period of time, and there's a lot of pressures from things that are going on in the economy. Things with international trade are making
Sure.
things more complicated right now. Certainly, a lot of uncertainty as we record this in early 2025. So, what would you say are the biggest challenges that Soundwich has as a business right now, and or with those challenges, what are you doing to distinguish yourself from other companies and to win in this environment?
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right describing, the turmoil and chaos that's sort of surrounding the automotive industry right now. One of my initiatives for the past 2 years or so has been to work on diversifying Soundwich's customer base. What
Hmm.
industries we serve
Right,
and what customers we serve within those industries, and trying to grow in addition to not just within the auto industry but outside of it as well, so that we have more diversification on that front. So that's how we've gotten into aerospace, how we've gotten into the industrial and
excellent.
battery sector as well. But
Hmm.
we've been an automotive company for almost 40 years. We started as an automotive company helping I think it was Chrysler in the 80s when the K car came out.
Hmm.
Um, but so I don't see that going away, at any point. But it is challenging. So the volumes are very volatile. You see the the industry reacting to policy decisions. It's sort of halted production at assembly plants or slowed it down. Some
Right.
some assembly plants, in Canada and Mexico have just said we're not going to build right now.
Hmm.
There's a lot of inventory on new car inventory right now. There's incentives we're having to put on. If we don't know if we're going to pay a 35-50% tariff bringing parts and vehicles across the border, only to have to slap on 0% financing incentives and
Hmm.
cash back rebates. Let's
Right.
just wait. What do I need
Right.
more of them for? So that's really depressed demand for the automotive side of our business.
Right. So
I
has
think
your have you built up inventories because you were forecasting for things and all of a sudden you've got blocked on some of the production builds and late in the game they say we're not going to buy these materials?
well, we haven't had we probably are carrying more inventory than normal operating state, sure, but
Right.
I've sort of challenged my team with driving that number down. Don't
Hmm.
hold on to too
Yeah.
much. Don't have it.
Right.
Certainly not just in time
Hmm.
for us right now, but yeah,
Right.
trying to balance what we're bringing in and with what we are going to produce and ship out. But
Sure.
it's a difficult juggling game for
Yeah.
that team, for the supply chain. plant management.
Right. So what's the biggest challenge in all of this for you right now as you look forward?
Well, looking forward, I mean, that's the short-term view, but looking forward through it, it's, what is the industry, what are our customers in the industry going to do? In general, they've been making, many billions of dollars in investments in, EVs,
Mhm.
electrification. And now there's so much uncertainty with, what the take rate, it hasn't been what it's
Right.
forecasted to be.
Right.
Policy changes are impacting that as well, or it looked like it's going to be regulated in anyway. So there's no,
Mhm.
consumers weren't going to have a choice, or will have less choice depending on where in the country you lived. Um, and now they're not recouping that investment because policy is changing, demand isn't there. A lot of outside of Tesla, a lot of EVs aren't selling well. So
Yeah, no, for
the
sure. I guess, from a long time, industry perspective, it's been a few years, over 40 years in and around the business.
yeah
I would say right now is a very unusual time in that respect as well, because the whole propulsion, kind of dynamic for vehicles is, in a major transition. And, there was a big investment in the transition taking place at one rate, and it's not taking place at that rate, right? The demand isn't there right now. And that was even with incentives that are in question about whether they're going to be there anymore to
yeah
further support it, right? So I guess I would say this, I think electric propulsion, in my estimation, makes sense. Vehicles are going to be electric in the future, at least have electric propulsion. How that electricity gets stored on board, produced on board, I mean, there's a lot of options for that as well. I think those dynamics are the things that are going to change, that are going to make those EVs more viable. I mean, they're a great driving experience, right? They're fast, they're, very high torque, low end responsiveness. They're quiet, they're smooth, fewer moving parts. In theory, a lot less maintenance in the long term. So we got to sort out a few issues, but right now as a customer, I mean, buying one with all of this uncertainty in the marketplace is even a bigger risk because our resale values are not
yeah
established and as stable. And so I think there's a lot of things that need to sort over the next few years, and they will, and we'll move there. It's just that I used to be a forecaster way back in the late '80s, early '90s, for one of the bigger companies, and the first thing you know about a forecast when you make it is that it's
it's
wrong.
wrong. Yeah.
So you're doing your absolute best, right? But I'll never forget that from the people who taught me about
Yeah.
forecasting. You do your best,
I,
but
I
we'll see
learned
where
that
we'll,
same
we'll see where
saying.
it comes. Right now, nothing's changed exactly. Nothing's changed. So, do you have a way that you stay current in the marketplace? Do you have a certain set of business intelligence or market research or customer feedback that you take that kind of keeps you current, kind of keeps you moving kind of to the next thing so you don't get caught behind the curve?
Sure. I mean, we do a lot of hands-on development work with our customers, like we mentioned earlier. So being plugged in with the purchasing and that, but more importantly, the engineering folks and the
Yeah,
product planning folks at our customers that
yeah,
we know what's coming up, what new vehicles are being developed now, well before they're going to be released. But um, and we participate in industry groups too. You
hmm,
know, everyone reports into IHS, gets that information. Um, I participate with the SAA, the Society of Automotive Analysts too, which is
hmm,
interesting to see
right,
what that industry, how they're viewing, the analysts are viewing
right,
what the auto industry is
right,
doing, is you know
yeah,
an interesting perspective, I think, especially when they're talking about investments and money pouring into the industry and supply industry. you know it's sometimes a different story than you hear from,
yeah,
say, the
right.
automakers on what they're going to do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just had another thought about your products and I mean, thermal may be a little bit less important as there's a transition to EVs, but you're still going to have, the NVH materials. You're going to have, sound deadening and acoustic issues and maybe some thermal and maybe some certainly electrical magnetic field shielding and things. But there must be some innovation in the materials as well because,
Mm-hmm.
certainly with nanotechnology and different engineered materials that are coming about. Do you get directly involved in kind of assessing those materials on a regular basis as new options become available? Because innovation in that space at the core of your product seems like it might be really critical.
Yeah, for sure. And we do that on both on the materials side. Some
Hmm.
materials we have the ability to make, in-house or at
Hmm.
one of our sister companies, what I mentioned within that DNT Moore portfolio.
Yes.
But then also with the third-party suppliers too, especially of insulating material, as they develop new things. Um, they want to make companies like Soundwich, aware of it so that it can, we can help commercialize it. We can find an application for it, and
Right.
use it. But then I'd say more of it takes place with on the customer side. We have a big, saying of, we need to find the unmet need, with those
Hmm.
engineering teams. And sometimes it's the design release engineer, sometimes it's cost engineering teams that are trying to
Right.
find
Right.
a cheaper, way or new way of doing it that takes, cost out of the vehicle at some level. Maybe it's a more expensive material, but it goes together as a sub-assembly to them and they save on assembly
Right.
labor and time, or it saves space on their assembly plant floor. All that's valuable to, to our customers. So they will look
Sure.
at it. There'll be people that look at it with different lenses.
Hmm.
So yeah, we do a lot of that, trying to find that unmet need, whether it's material, how we make, or what the format of the, product is for them.
Yeah.
So in the
Yeah.
EV space, there's a lot of, I'd say the next wave on the battery pack is trying to make it safer. So a lot of
Hmm.
the materials we work with and the products we make, you know, are helping to meet the design challenges for the pack safety regulations that are, very,
Yeah. Yeah.
very shortly coming probably.
Yeah.
So if there's a thermal runaway type event,
Right.
you need high temperature, you know, products like we make to help
Yeah.
route
I
and
mean,
direct that away from.
literally fire shield at an incredibly high level, right?
Yeah, I mean that it's a very violent release of energy and
Yeah.
very hot
Yeah.
gases. So
Yeah.
you want to direct that,
Sure.
down and away from the passenger cabin, so that if God forbid there is an event, that somebody has time to get out and away from it. You know,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just glad that we have people like you and your company who are looking at those kinds of things because, again, as we said earlier in the program, these are kind of things that people don't look at. So as we think about, kind of your leadership journey, understanding how to delegate and how to move into a leadership role and how to communicate and coordinate and hit your targets kind of in a different way. I think those have been great learnings that you've shared. Let's look forward now. These are questions I ask every guest on the program. I ask two questions. The first one is, if you're going to look back 15 or 20 years, what would you tell your younger self about being a leader and running a company successfully?
yeah. I'd say to listen more. You don't have to be right.
Good.
you
Boy,
know,
that's good
doesn't
advice.
matter. As long as we get the right answer, it doesn't matter that it has. If you're the one that comes up with it, let go of that
Right.
sooner.
Yeah. Boy, that's so important. Conversations with some people tend to be competitive. It's like who gets the best score, who's right, who's wrong. It's about the company getting the right answer, right?
Yeah, and then getting to where you want to be. So
Yeah, that's
I
smart.
would say that. The other thing I would
Hmm.
try and tell myself is, to be less afraid to fail. You know,
Hmm. Yeah. That's come up in previous sessions when we've had with other executives that, be willing to fail fast and learn from your mistakes and go on. If you wait for a perfect answer, you might wait too late when
too
the
long. Yeah,
competition's blown by you on the track, right?
it's
Yeah,
true.
that's very
Time
insightful.
kills all deals. You don't want to miss the
Yeah,
opportunity.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, time cures everything, but it also kills them as well if you wait too late. So, last question. So let's fast forward and imagine that you and I are having a conversation 20 years from now. And let's say that we're looking back over our lives and our careers, and there's something that we're most proud of. What would that be for you, Alex?
Well, that's a good question. Um, I would say that I'd be happy if to be able to continue building something that's meaningful. That to put out things that helped in a small way helped help change, transportation and help get the industry to where it's going. And that, we were a company that was a good place for people to work, that they could be proud of, what they accomplished there.
Yeah.
I would feel good about that.
Yeah, good for
You
you.
know?
I think that's a worthy legacy to leave. I like to say that, our purpose in life has a lot to do with the value that we can create in the world. And if you create
Mhm.
value, that value is
Sure.
going to come back to you and your employees and the people you live with. So, yeah, very insightful. So, anything else you want to say before we sign off? I've asked you a lot of questions. You all,
I'd say I want to thank you for, having me on today,
yeah, you're more than
talk a
welcome.
little
It's
bit
great
about
to have
myself
you.
and what we do.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and I think this program is going to be interesting for a lot of folks because
Right.
these are sometimes they're simple lessons that we need to learn, but ones that we need in any case. So, thank you very much for being with us today. That'll
Sure.
be our discussion for the day, and we'll look forward to staying in touch with you.
All right. Thanks, Wayne. Really appreciate it.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks for being with us. If you like our conversations, please feel free to hit the subscribe and like buttons. And if you'd like to make comments, ask questions, or even explore being a guest on this program, you can reach out to us via email. It's wayne@greatroad.com. That's WAYNE at GR numeral 8 ROAD.com. And until next time, always remember the high road leads to a better place.